The United Nations General Assembly chamber has seen decades of diplomacy, resolutions that echo, speeches that disappear into silence, but what unfolded today was not diplomacy, it was defiance. What began as a routine session turned into something history will never forget. The world watched as Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traoré stepped forward with papers, not with prepared remarks, but with something far more dangerous, the truth.
I did not come here to participate in a performance. I did not come for applause, for polite nods, or the empty courtesies that are exchanged without meaning. My name is Ibrahim Traoré, and I speak not as a visitor, but as the voice of a continent that has waited, watched for far too long. As I stood in that chamber, I saw the same routines, the same practiced expressions, the same endless speeches that promise much but change nothing. And then, across the room, I saw the weight of indifference, leaders disengaged, unmoved by the realities people face beyond these walls. So I set aside my prepared remarks. I leaned into the microphone, and I spoke not what was written, but what was needed. History will not remember the ceremonies. It will remember who had the courage to speak when silence became complicity. The hall fell quiet, but I had only just begun.
Asps echoed across the marble hall. Heads turned, cameras zoomed in. Some whispered, some smiled nervously, but one man stood, Netanyahu. And what came next shattered the illusion of order the UN has clung to for decades.
He tried to interrupt me, dismissively, arrogantly. He told me I represent a failed state, but Burkina Faso has not failed. It has endured, and we no longer bow. So I stepped down from the podium, calm, measured, and I walked, boots echoing across the marble floor, until I stood face to face with the man who believes his power makes him untouchable. I looked him in the eyes, and without raising my voice, without flinching, I said, "You do not speak to Africa that way, not anymore." That moment wasn't scripted, it wasn't rehearsed, it was real, and the world felt it.
Within minutes, the clip exploded across social media. From Accra to Johannesburg, from London to Lahore, timelines lit up with a single message. He spoke for all of us. Hashtags trended. Commentators scrambled. Protesters flooded the streets across Africa and the Middle East, not just in solidarity with Gaza, but in celebration of a leader who finally broke the UN's silence. But for Traoré, it wasn't about going viral. It was about calling out the moral theater that lets war crimes pass as policy.
They called it undiplomatic, they called it reckless. But I did not grab a man. I grabbed an empire by the collar, one that hides behind suits, press releases, and veto powers, one that sanctions the truth and silences the brave, and they couldn't handle it. Because for decades, you've grown used to African leaders asking, politely, for justice. Today, we stopped asking.
Hours later, at an emergency press briefing, Netanyahu tried to minimize the moment. He called Traoré's words theatrics. He called the confrontation dangerous rhetoric. But behind closed doors, Israeli diplomats were reportedly shaken. Western governments called urgent meetings. Sanctions were whispered. Leaks emerged. One European ambassador reportedly said, "We've never seen a sub-Saharan leader take it that far, and mean it."
They think power is what you sign behind closed doors. I say power is what you say when the cameras are on and the world is watching. I say power is standing alone and still not stepping back. And if defending the innocent, if standing against bombs disguised as policy is a threat, then consider me dangerous.
Across Africa, street murals of Traoré appeared overnight. One in Dakar shows him gripping a microphone, red beret on his head, flames in the background, and a caption, "He didn't raise his voice, he raised us."
I didn't come to the UN to beg. I came to remind you that Africa remembers. We remember colonization disguised as aid. We remember invasions disguised as democracy. And now we see Gaza again. You bomb schools and speak of freedom. You blockade food and speak of peace. You jail journalists and speak of security. And then you ask us to remain silent? No.
The UN Security Council called an emergency session not because of violence, but because of words. Words that dared to challenge the illusion that some lives matter more than others. Traoré's message was simple, but it shook the system.
If you believe Africa is still too small to matter, you haven't been paying attention. We are not the shadows of your empires. We are the storm that follows. And to Prime Minister Netanyahu, I give no apology. I offer no correction. I repeat what I said in front of the world. You do not speak to Africa that way. Not anymore.
That evening, back in Ouagadougou, Traoré was greeted not with applause, but with chants. Tens of thousands filled the streets. No music, Just one voice playing on loudspeakers, his, and the words that were still echoing around the world.
My people, this wasn't just a speech. This was a line drawn in the sand. I cannot promise you comfort. I cannot promise you safety, but I can promise you this. Burkina Faso will never again be used as a backdrop to someone else's power play.
Western media tried to spin it. They called it the most dangerous moment in UN history, but for many in the global south, it was the most honest moment they've ever witnessed.
I didn't come to the UN for a performance. I came because I was tired of watching children pulled from rubble while your politicians sip coffee and call it regrettable. I came because I'm tired of statements with no consequences. And if my words shook your world, good. It needed shaking.
One viral comment said it best: when Africa spoke, the world heard thunder.
To every young African watching, to every Palestinian child who wonders if anyone is listening, we hear you. And we will not let your suffering be translated into sanitized diplomatic language. We will not let your death be called necessary collateral. We will not let your pain be background noise.
The UN wasn't ready. The West wasn't ready. But Africa was. This wasn't just a message. It was a warning, a mirror, and a beginning.
So let the record show, I did not come here to ask for justice. I came to demand it. And I am not alone anymore. This is the beginning of a new page, not written by the powerful, but by the brave. This is Troy Uprising, and we are just getting started.